what exactly is the invitation to change approach?
Well, it's really a collection of a bunch of what we would call evidence-based ideas taken from a variety of different really effective treatment approaches that help both families and people struggling with substances themselves. The important element about it in terms of us developing this approach over the last 10 years has been essentially spending that 10 years with families. Starting out as a project to help parents coach other parents, we started with CRAFT, which was developed by Bob Myers. And that's a very effective evidence-based approach for helping engage a loved one into treatment. But what we realized in talking that through with parents and training them and spending hours and weekends with people was that that was not enough. Some of those tools didn't make enough sense to them, and there was a lot missing. They needed additional strategies. They needed strategies from acceptance and commitment therapy. They needed self-compassion ideas. So we've spent a lot of time sort of going back and forth, going out on the road, literally, doing trainings, coming back and going, that didn't work. What about that can we change? Getting feedback directly from the folks we're working with and from the people who were actually out there struggling with their kids day after day, year after year, and hearing what was going on and saying, okay, we need to actually describe this better. We need to come up with ideas that you can use more easily. We're making this too complicated. We're being psychologists and it's not helpful to you. So how do we make this stuff that you can grab onto, understand, and use? So that's really been the genesis of this. I think it took that period of time for us to get to a place in our book where we can now say, this is the approach. Here's how you do it. Here are the ideas. There's always ideas that you hear from other people, from families, experiences that you have that's set off a light bulb in our heads where we say, we really should be talking about this also. But I think it's gotten to a place now where it's a bunch of really useful ideas for people.
CRAFT is an incredibly helpful set of strategies for motivating a loved one into treatment. But what we learned in working with trying to train parents in CRAFT is if you walk in to learn CRAFT, but you have a stigmatized, kind of old school understanding of what addiction is, you're going to be really skeptical of the CRAFT skills. You're going to be like, I don't actually believe that that's going to be helpful. So part of what we did in the invitation to change approach is add the helping with understanding section, which is just to help shift your perspective a little bit in how you understand the problem so that you will be more likely to use those really effective skills that are in CRAFT. And then also what we learned over time is just parents are so beat up. They're just beat up by our culture. They're beat up by their experiences with their kid. They're just tired. And CRAFT has a huge component of self-care, right? That's a big part of CRAFT, but doesn't really talk about self-compassion, which that's a deeper internal process of bringing kindness to yourself and to your child over time. That's a really important element. And this idea of practice, making that a key point of you got to practice. Your kid's going to have to practice. That's not really talked about as directly as we felt like it needed to be.
And really speak to people's experience.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the humbling part of this for us for years, was the number of times a parent in distress, hugely challenging issues going on with their kid, heartbreaking things, asking a question. And I'd be like, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know how to handle this situation. And for us to not have to come up with answers, but to be able to come up with a way to help frame those things for families and help them live with those problems and live with those issues.
So your approach has evolved.
Yeah.
Just in the same way that recovery treatment has evolved.
I think that what has evolved for us is we have always been very focused on motivation as a central part of the change process. And we've always been focused on literal behavior change, that, as we say, behavior changes when you change your behavior. So if you're not actually encouraging and helping people, whether it's a parent as a helper or the person who's struggling with substances, start to actually put changes into place, you're probably not helping them. Just chatting with people, it's not really what it's about. It's helping shift motivation, and it's helping them take steps in their life that are going to acquaint them with a different way of doing things. One thing that we have moved towards over that time is also a different relationship to the idea of pain. And what do we do about the fact that this is a really difficult and painful process? There's lots that happens for families when they first enter into this realm, and they're not entering into this realm by choice, that is around, how do I make the pain go away?
and you're looking for a quick fix, so to speak.
Yeah.
A quick fix because you're in pain.
Yeah.
You're uncomfortable. So you want it to go away as fast as possible. So it's not a terrible thing that you're wanting a quick fix. It's just not likely there. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is when you're interacting with treatment providers, if they really quickly start to give you a bunch of prescriptive messages about what you should do for your kid, your antenna needs to go up and be like, are they talking to me? And are they actually trying to get to know my kid? Or are they just giving me a quick answer that they give to every other person that they speak to, or some variation of that? Like, are they actually listening to me? And are they actually wanting to know my struggle with my kid? Because that's what's going to be helpful to me. Not just somebody saying, well, if you just do X, Y, and Z, things will be good.
This is your most precious relationship. And you're desperate for help and scared. And someone is telling you, do X, Y, and Z. This will alter the course of everyone's life here. And no, I don't need to meet your child because they're an addict. So I know what's going on. Well, you don't actually know what's going on.
And so that's an important message for parents who are on this platform to hear. That if you start hearing certain words and phrases over the phone when you're trying to help your child, you should run the other way. Or
just have your antenna up. Just be skeptical and slow down. One of the things about the invitation to change and the helping with awareness section is about giving yourself permission to slow down a little bit. You may feel like you're in crisis. You may actually be in crisis in many respects, but rushing through and just getting like a quick answer, or the thing that sounds like, okay, if I just do this, my kid's going to be okay. Change does not work that way. You might get your kid into rehab and the rehab might be okay, but you've still got an enormous amount of things to learn, things to try, things that are going to help your kid. Like that one answer somebody gave you is, I promise you, it's not going to be enough.
You've asked us about the word invitation, which is pretty central to the whole idea. It's directly related to this whole idea of, I would just like this to get better and I would just like this pain to go away. That's not really what an invitation is about. An invitation is something that someone else can turn down. That's another part of an invitation. If you're really inviting someone, they get to say no. So you're living with, I would like to have you do this. I would like to invite you. I would like to create the conditions for this to happen. And you still get to say no because you're another human being.
okay, let's say your child does not accept your invitation to change.
Right.
What the heck do you do?
Right. You get upset. You feel panicky. You have the desire. We sometimes refer to a certain approach as the Mr. Straight Shooter approach. Sometimes people say, you know what? We need to cut through the crap and I need to be a straight shooter and tell you a thing or two about what's going on and be real with you about that. My take on what somebody being real is usually about is, I'm so anxious about what you're doing that I want to yell at you and try to get you to stop. So I'm going to be real and tell you what a jerk you are, and tell you to pull your head out of sand and try to force you to do it so that I can feel better, so that I can get you to do this thing. We'll all feel better. And as we've talked about before, that straight shooting is not an invitation and it's not effective. Straight shooting with somebody is not the thing that's going to make them shift. Or it might for one kid.
I was going to say it might
Right.
for a bit. It
Right.
might get you some compliance in that one little moment. But again, that's not real internal motivation. That doesn't last over the long haul.
Right.
It's really the invitation to change is being able to figure out communication strategies and reinforcement strategies. So instead of that conversation that straight shooter's doing,
Which
is like,
would be a one-way conversation.
exactly, I'm
Right.
telling
This
you
is
to
what
do this.
I want you to hear.
Right.
So maybe it is that reluctance to actually deal with pain. I'm just going to be that straight shooter because I want to avoid as much pain as possible. But you all are saying, no, this is about changing your relationship with pain.
If I take a different strategy to my pain and use different communication skills, I might be able to say to you, so I'm really frightened by what you're doing, but I also really want to understand it. There's something very compelling about it to you, which is why you keep doing it. So tell me about it. And you're going to tell me a bunch of stuff that scares me most likely or upsets me, right? So I need to be able to be okay with the fact that I'm likely going to get upset. I'm going to have to be willing to be upset or uncomfortable while I listen to you and engage with you, because that information is what's going to be what I use to start to influence the environment around you and potentially help you change.
if you think about the language around straight shooting, people will say stuff like, look, I just had to give him the truth and now it's on him. Well, what does that mean? It means it's off me. Get it off me. I said my piece. Now it's on you and I don't want to have to deal with it anymore. As opposed to, I told you my heart is breaking because of the troubles that you're having. I told you I lie awake at night and can't sleep. And I'm inviting you to do something differently. And I can't force you to do that. So I actually have to live with the anxiety of, I don't know what you're going to do. That's a different path to step onto.
So you talk a lot about collaboration, and we all know that collaboration and connection and community are all the basic tenets of recovery. So we talk about the collaboration between the parent and the child, but what about the collaboration with the parents themselves? Why does that often seem so hard to achieve?
A lot of tension,
a lot of different opinions.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of pain.
Yeah. And different ways of relating to that pain, right? So I might, when I'm in pain, tend to get mad. I get angry. I get mad to try to control my pain or make myself, not because I feel more comfortable being angry than in pain. Jeff, what do you do with your pain?
I may shut down. I may get depressed or go underground, or I may plow ahead and just feel like everything's fine. We're good. We got this. So those are all different ways of approaching it. If we have very different ways of approaching it and we're committed to sticking with our way of approaching it, we're not connecting around this.
And we can also judge each other, right? So different caretakers can end up judging each other. So if I get angry, he might be like, she's angry all the time and that's not effective. And what's up wrong with her? So he's looking at me. I'm looking at him. He's like not dealing with the problem. So I'm more mad at him. So it's just like, it just creates more fractions and more disagreements and more distance and conflict, when what you're actually most likely as caretakers wanting to do is try to help your kid, right? So how can you move together, have compassion for each other, appreciate each other's differences in order to help this child that you care about? And I would love to expand it to beyond parents, because I think like many families, it involves grandparents, neighbors, aunts, uncles. There's a lot of people that can influence a child, and having everybody be on the same page or aware of like, we're all trying to use these strategies. You've got a really powerful network potentially around a kid.
But I'll also go back to the relationship to pain as a central part of this. If you think about what happens with sports teams when they're doing really well versus when they're doing really poorly, it's really, really easy to be a great teammate when we're winning a lot. We all love this. We're all in this together. We're brothers and sisters. It's all good. When teams start to lose, that's when they start to fight. They start to fight because I'm anxious. Maybe I'm screwing up. I'm letting you down. You're mad at me. And we're not united in any way. And that actually just doubles down on the problem that's happening. We got to blame somebody.
Yeah.
Right. We got to judge somebody. We got to find the person who's at fault, the most at fault. And again, if you think about that in terms of a team, that's the worst thing that can possibly happen.
But if you think about part of what's happening when you're looking for blame, like if I can blame him as being the source of the problem, then I've taken care of my pain. I'm in less pain because I've put it over there. He's the problem, right? Versus my pain's hard. It's hard to carry. It's hard to feel. So how can I relate to my pain in a different way so that I'm not casting blame over here and just causing another layer of problems for myself, which is not what I need.
And can we say to each other, I'm in a lot of pain. It's so hard to watch our kid. I know that for me, I want to go underground and act like everything's okay. I know that for you, you get really anxious and really wound up and really micro-focused on a bunch of small things. Can we actually just put that on the table and have some greater level of acceptance that that's what we're reacting to? We can't make that pain go away, but we can at least be aware of what our tendencies are in that context.
You mentioned acceptance. What are some ideas you may have for parents watching this on how parents can accept the reality of what's happening to their child and be able to sit with that more comfortably, even though it's terribly uncomfortable?
Well, I think that involves a lot of skills in the invitation to change approach, right? Acceptance gets used a lot as a thing that you should be doing. It's incredibly difficult, right? It's really hard to do. So being even aware that I need to accept this as reality, that's an awareness piece of I'm trying to change everything. I'm trying to fix everything versus like, wow, like this is what's actually happening in my home and with my kid. So that's kind of step one, is using that self-awareness and then being able to bring that self-compassion to it of like, and this is really hard. And I need to be kind to myself. I need to be kind to other people who are trying to help my child with me. And can I change the energy that we're bringing to this problem? Because if I'm just in chaos, frenetic, panic mode all the time, things just don't go well. You can't sustain that level of energy. You've got to soften some of the edges in order to stick with things over the long haul.
And I think another one of the basic ideas that does get to this whole idea of acceptance is the first idea we talk about, which is the behaviors make sense. It's a straightforward, simple idea. It's profound in the sense that it starts to help me understand someone else's behavior in a way that brings compassion, in a way that can help me see them as a person like me who struggles, not as a demon somehow got in the house last night and we didn't know it. And we got to get that thing out of here. This is a person who's struggling. This is a person who's solving problems certain ways. And how do we move in other directions? That allows acceptance, I think, because it's not we have to get out this terrible thing. This is part of being human that we're struggling with here. And that's a sort of a deeply accepting idea.
Being human, finding literally the humanity in all of this.
Yeah, we talk about this also. The 12-Step Fellowship is a human organization. And part of the profound impact it has for certain people, and not everyone, is the humility of acceptance.
Acceptance is humbling. I can speak for myself.
Yeah.
I still struggle with it, even with many, many, many years of recovery.
Yeah. And I think some of the language can lead people to feel like they need to accept flaws or these kind of things. And I think we think of it a little bit differently. And as you just put it, I think acceptance of humanity. That's a broader thing than I have specific flaws and I need to accept those. I'm a human being, and of course I have flaws. And can I accept that I struggle? And can I accept that we all have pain?
I'm only human after all.
Yeah, turns out.
Right.
I'm a parent, and parents are human after all. Parents are not some magical thing in the world with some magical standard that's supposed to be met. Parents are humans, first and foremost. They also have a title and a job called being a parent, amongst many other things in their life.
And it is a difficult job.
Yeah.
The invitation to change is made up of 3 parts: understanding, awareness, and action. But at the center of it all, you say, is practice, because learning new behavior can't happen without it.
As one of our colleagues who is part of the development team for the Invitation to Change, Ken Carpenter, the psychologist, has been doing addiction work for 30 years himself. He likes to say, I got more training to drive a car than I did to be a parent. And they sent me home from the hospital with no manual. Turns out they forgot to put that into the car seat for the baby. And there we were. And I think that's true. That's a aspect of our culture, which is a little bit missing, which is you're just supposed to somehow know how to be a parent. And you get assigned that job because you had a kid. And there you go, with no explanation other than whatever you went through as a kid. And then add on top of that, oh, by the way, your kid is struggling with a really scary issue that you have no idea how to help them with. So good luck, and let us know how things go.
So we're trying to help the parent or the caretaker realize, like, I've got some new things that I can learn to be an effective helper. And I'm going to have to practice and go through trial and error. And I'm going to have to screw up and feel awkward. And I'm going to have to go through all of that to be an effective helper, right? That is true for their loved one who they're hoping to change, hoping will change, right? So their child who's struggling with a substance use problem is going to have to practice new behaviors in order to give up that behavior. So they're going to have to practice giving up that behavior, and they're going to have to practice a whole host of behaviors to replace it. So really infusing it all with the idea that practice has to happen everywhere and over the long haul, because that's really how change happens.
After being in the field for 30 years, and what we know about families is there couldn't be a harder working, more loyal, more big-hearted, loving group than the families of people who are struggling with substances. And if we can engage them and say, Here's some ideas. Here's some tools. We want you to be the force of change, not the right doctor. That's going to change the culture. So that's the level we're trying to start this at, is changing communities, offering these tools. Our foundation does trainings around the country for communities to hand over the tools and say, we've trained you now. You've got some of this under your belt. Go for it. You can do it. Here's the manual. Start your own group and work with families. You don't need us.
I've always said that I think if people picked these skills up before their child started having issues, they would be able to deal with those issues in a completely different way. And it might actually prevent some problems from really taking root. Because a lot of parents, they see substance use and they're like, "Ooh, I hope that goes away," or
hope my child
maybe I
doesn't
didn't
have
see
to deal with
that, or whatever, or they'll just grow out of it. They wish a lot of things versus like, okay, I see that. And I know I can do X, Y, and Z in response to that and be effective in doing it. So I think my hope is that people pick this up. And I've had people listen to us talk and say I have 9-year-olds that, I'm going to read this now so that when they go into middle school, I'm able to deal with it.
Well, the evidence shows us that the earlier we can talk to children, the better off they're going to be in terms of having less likelihood of developing substance use disorder.
Yep.
I think if this kind of way of approaching the problem and thinking about substance use disorder could kind of take hold in multiple places, we could really change the culture, which would be what a cool thing.
So what do you hope that the invitation to change approach does in the field of recovery and just out in the world?
We sometimes use the phrase, we hope it changes the conversation. And by that, we're mostly talking about stigma, shame, avoidance of difficult issues, and encouraging people to invite these discussions in, invite these problems in, not have to shy away from them, not have to get away from the pain. Realize my kid is struggling. We sometimes use this metaphor of, if you're in this culture, if your child was struggling with leukemia and you needed to raise funds for treatment because you couldn't afford it, you would go up and down the block asking people for donations. If your child needed to go to rehab, you don't go up and down the block asking for donations. Yeah. So your kid is not going to rehab because of that.
And he said stigma, but directly attached to stigma is the shame, right? I really hope the invitation to change just takes the shame out of this very human problem. That's Behaviors Make Sense is designed to help people realize you don't actually have to be ashamed of that behavior. It's serving a purpose.
And in fact, the shame accomplishes nothing.
Zero.
And it leads to more stigmatization.
It sends us backwards.
Pain.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to quote from your website. Experiences of stigmatization lead to poorer health outcomes in people struggling with substance use. Internalized and societal stigma can worsen health issues and decrease the likelihood that someone will seek help. That's right. That's why I didn't seek help for a long time.
That's why I think what you guys are doing with Real is so amazing, to be able to create a platform where people are like, oh, I see myself. Oh, these are really helpful strategies. I don't actually have to feel horrible about myself because my kid is struggling.
And isn't that what people want, is reassurance that they are not the only family going through this?
They're not uniquely bad. Their kid is not uniquely bad.
You're not bad parents. You're not a bad family. Your kid isn't bad.
Right.
So the invitation to change is all about just thinking about the words we use, thinking about who you're talking to, and being able to really be thoughtful about what is going to keep this person engaged in the conversation. And I just think there's so many teens and young adults who Real is trying to help that they may have serious problems now. That doesn't guarantee they're going to have serious problems down the road with substances. If parents are able to intervene now and intervene effectively and deal with the things that are driving that substance use, they may never go on to have a problem. And that would be an awesome outcome.
And that is a hopeful message for anyone watching right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would think that would give parents watching this oh, there is hope. There is help.
We do this work because people get better, and it's amazing to see. Families get better, people get better.
I am living proof that people get better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One last message for parents who are watching this right now. What do you want them to know?
This is a lot of work. Change absolutely can happen. You have not lost your child. And if you're willing to open your heart and hang in there, and open the lines of communication and risk pain, change will happen. It will.
Stay connected. Stay connected to your kid and to yourself and to the community around you, because we all need help. Just don't try to do this alone. It's unnecessary pain. Let yourself get help.
What we say on this platform is, you can't do this alone. You shouldn't do this alone. And you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah,
That's a
those
nice
are
way to
great.
put it, yeah.